25 old Hollywood actors who went bankrupt from bad contracts. You're nothing to me now. James Cagney barked that line on screen, but off-screen, old Hollywood was saying it to its stars every day. An old Hollywood actor wasn't just an artist. He was a product, a prisoner, and often a pawn. Behind the glittering premieres and Oscar gold, there was chaos, brutal studio contracts, legal traps, and ironclad deals that bled legends dry. These are the 25 old Hollywood actors who went bankrupt from bad contracts. And wait for the bonus, because one star's deal was so catastrophic, he died broke while still owing the studio money. Smash that like, subscribe, and grab a stiff drink. This story's about to get expensive. 1. Judy Garland. Judy Garland wasn't just a voice. She was a goldmine, until MGM mined her dry. From The Wizard of Oz onward, Judy was locked into a suffocating studio contract. MGM controlled every paycheck, every tour, every dime. She was paid a fraction of her film's revenue, while the studio raked in millions. Worse, MGM advanced her living expenses, but charged them back at inflated prices. She bought nothing without MGM's markup. By the 1950s, her addiction to studio-prescribed pills and lavish spending spiraled. She defaulted on taxes. Her house was repossessed. And when she asked MGM for help, Louis B. Mayer reportedly told her, "You're an asset. Assets don't ask for help." She died with $4 in the bank. 2. Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney was once the highest-paid actor in America, but the contracts that made him rich also ruined him. MGM paid him millions, then handed most of it straight to his handlers, agents, and wives. He signed away back-end royalties in exchange for one-time paychecks. And he kept signing 7 marriages, 8 children, mountains of alimony. By the 1970s, he was broke. IRS liens on his house, creditors at his door. He once said, "I outlived every studio that screwed me, but I didn't outlive the debt." Even in his 90s, he was acting, just to survive. 3. Bela Lugosi became a horror icon with Dracula, but Universal never gave him Dracula money. He accepted a flat $500 per week during filming. No residuals, no future rights. He signed fast, desperate for a break. Afterward, he was typecast. Studios lowballed him, saying he was lucky to work at all. To keep going, Lugosi starred in Poverty Row pictures for pennies. One contract even forced him to bring his own wardrobe. He died in 1956 with less than $1,900 to his name, buried in his Dracula cape. 4. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge made history as the first black woman nominated for a Best Actress Oscar, but the studios never let her cash in on her legacy. Her contract for Carmen Jones was rigid. She got a one-time payment with no cut of the profits. Worse, systemic racism barred her from leading roles. She played maids, exotic dancers, never wives, never leads. Her financial advisors lost her money. Her ex-husband drained her accounts. She died alone in a crumbling Los Angeles apartment, her bank account nearly empty, her contract rights long expired. 5. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn looked invincible on screen. Off-screen, his bank account was constantly under siege. Flynn's Warner Brothers contract paid him handsomely, $200,000 per picture, but locked him out of profit sharing. While Captain Blood and the Adventures of Robin Hood made millions, Flynn saw none of it. He spent freely. Yachts, women, libel suits. And every time he asked for a raise, Warner Brothers said, "Read the contract." By 1959, he owed more than he owned. He died of a heart attack in a cheap Vancouver apartment, his bank account reportedly negative. 6. Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer had the kind of raw talent that lit up the screen in Come and Get It and Rhythm on the Range. But she wasn't interested in playing by Hollywood's rules, and that spelled financial ruin. Under contract to Paramount, she was forced into roles she hated, with paychecks that didn't reflect her rising stardom. Her refusal to play the Hollywood game led to her being labeled difficult, and her contract was slowly weaponized against her. They docked her pay for uncooperative behavior. They fined her for missing rehearsals, even when she was hospitalized. She fought back, but lost everything. Her finances crumbled. Then came the arrests, the institutionalizations. At her lowest point, she was given shock treatments. She returned years later, a ghost of her former self. The money? Gone. The career? Stolen. All because she tried to control her own destiny, something her contract never allowed. Guisot, George Raft. George Raft was the original tough guy, street smart, sharp-dressed, and one of the highest-paid stars at Warner Brothers. But while his gangster image made millions for studios, it bankrupted him. His contract didn't include residuals, just big upfront payments that vanished as fast as they came. Raft spent wildly, gambling, women, mob ties. He turned due. Roles in Casablanca and Double Indemnity. Huge paydays missed due to bad advice and ego. At one point, he owed more in taxes than he had in assets. The IRS seized his house. His last major contract locked him into low-budget films for pocket change. What audiences didn't know? The man who played high rollers on screen died nearly penniless, working as a greeter at a Vegas casino. Raft's final line to a reporter, "I made a lot of money. I just never learned how to keep it." 8. Mae West. Mae West was a trailblazer, writing, producing, and starring in her own movies. But even that didn't save her from Hollywood's contract traps. Paramount paid her well early on, but when her films were banned for being too provocative, the studio buried her. Her contract kept her locked in exclusivity. She couldn't work elsewhere without their approval. They shelved her scripts, blocked outside offers, and let her public image rot. She sued. She lost. And she paid dearly. Her investment managers mishandled her wealth. Her earnings evaporated in bad real estate deals and lawsuits. And with every missed role, her earning power slipped further. Mae West wasn't just underpaid, she was systematically silenced. By the 1950s, she was nearly broke, performing nightclub acts to survive. Not because she wanted to, but because the studio owned her voice and buried her power. 9. Lon Chaney Jr. Lon Chaney Jr. followed in his father's footsteps, but the silver screen didn't pay in silver. When Universal cast him in The Wolfman, they gave him a flat contract with zero royalties and no franchise protection. The studio used his image endlessly. Lunchboxes, posters, sequels. But Chaney Jr. never saw a dime. His contract stated he could be replaced without notice. So they slashed his pay, reused old footage, and demanded he do dangerous stunts to save money. By the 1960s, he was typecast, drinking heavily, and acting in B-movies for beer money. His medical bills piled up. Creditors hounded him. His final roles were desperate, low-paying, humiliating cameos. And when he died in 1973, there were no savings, no royalties, just boxes of Wolfman memorabilia and a stack of unpaid bills. He gave his face to Hollywood. Hollywood gave him nothing back. 10th, Tony Curtis. Tony Curtis oozed charm, from Some Like It. Hot to the defiant ones, he was a star. But his Universal contract was a financial time bomb. Locked in during his early years, the contract capped his salary, forbade profit participation, and extended automatically. When his fame exploded, his pay didn't. To renegotiate, he had to buy himself out at an insane price. He did it, but by then, the damage was done. He tried to produce his own films, but distributors refused. Universal blacklisted him behind the scenes. Curtis turned to art and autobiography to recover his image, but the money never returned. Multiple marriages and lavish spending drained him dry. In his own words, "I was a millionaire. Then I was a punchline. Now I'm painting to pay the rent." He died wealthy in reputation, but in dollars, that fortune was long gone. Go ahead and like and subscribe because we're only halfway through, and the worst contract disaster is still coming. Keep watching. 11. Clara Bow. Clara Bow was the face of the Roaring '20s, but behind the flapper glam, she was being financially devoured. Her Paramount contract churned out films like a factory line, 15 movies in 2 years. She was promised fame, not fortune. The studio paid her a fixed salary, then billed her for wardrobe, makeup, and even private security. Her own paycheck came back with deductions that left her wondering if she'd ever been paid at all. When she tried to walk away, they blackmailed her with scandal magazines and contract clauses. By 1933, after nervous breakdowns and betrayals by friends and managers, she quit Hollywood entirely. Her money? Gone to handlers, hangers-on, and bad investments. She retired to a Nevada ranch, haunted by paranoia and rumors. She once told a reporter, "They took what I had, and then they left me with the silence." 12. Joan Garfield. Joan Garfield had it all: brooding good looks, stage cred, and breakout roles like Body and Soul. But he also had a conscience, and that didn't sit well in 1950s Hollywood. He refused to name names during the HUAC hearings. In response, the studios blacklisted him, nullifying every contract he had. Before that, Warner Brothers had him locked into low-rate deals. Even when his films hit big, he was paid pennies compared to his co-stars, and the blacklist erased what little financial leverage he had left. He tried to form his own company, but no distributor would touch him. He died at 39 from a heart attack, alone in a New York apartment, broke and blackballed. "I fought for what I believed in," he said once, "but the price was everything." 13. Thelma Todd. Known as the ice cream blonde, Thelma Todd was a staple in 1930s comedies, but her contracts were no laughing matter. She was paid by the picture, not by performance, and that meant no royalties, no brand licensing, and no protections. Meanwhile, the studios capitalized on her popularity with endless short films, squeezing every dime they could. To gain control, she opened a cafe in Pacific Palisades, but studio execs and local mobsters didn't like her independence. They cut her film offers. She was sued repeatedly. Her income dried up. Then came her mysterious death in a garage at just 29. No one really knows what happened, what audiences didn't see: a woman crushed by contracts, lawsuits, and the cost of autonomy. 14. Lou Costello. Lou Costello was half of Abbott and Costello, the comedy team behind Who's on First. But while audiences laughed, Lou's bank account was crying. The duo's contract with Universal gave them huge exposure, but little control. They didn't own their material. They didn't see profits from reruns, syndication, or merchandise. Worse, Costello trusted family to manage his money. That trust was misplaced. Bad investments, unpaid taxes, and frivolous spending drained his fortune. Then came the worst blow: a contract clause that forced him to fund his own film reshoots after a disagreement with the studio. He paid out of pocket. It bankrupted him. Lou once joked, "We made people laugh, but we never laughed at our paychecks." By his death in 1959, he was millions in debt. 15. Jean Harlow. Jean Harlow was MGM's golden goose, but her contracts? Paper cages with velvet bars. She was on a fixed weekly salary, even as her films made astronomical profits. She couldn't take outside roles, couldn't renegotiate, and the studio kept her so busy, she never had time to track her finances. Her stepfather managed her money, and mismanaged it spectacularly. Lavish spending, unpaid taxes, and shady loans depleted her earnings. When she fell ill during Saratoga, the studio forced her to continue filming. She collapsed on set and died days later at age 26. After her death, MGM rushed to complete the film using doubles. No bonus was paid to her family. No royalties were ever due. Jean Harlow was the poster child of studio stardom and the prime example of how contracts could kill, slowly and without mercy. 16. Tony Franciosa. Tony Franciosa had breakout hits in the late 50s, even earning an Oscar nomination for A Hatful of Rain. But he quickly discovered that talent doesn't protect you from a toxic contract. Signed to a long-term deal with Universal, Franciosa had no creative control and almost no say in what roles he took. When he tried to push back, they suspended him without pay. In one case, he was replaced mid-shoot, then sued for breach of contract when he refused to accept a smaller, degrading role. His penalties stacked up. His career momentum stalled. To keep up appearances, he borrowed heavily. Fancy homes, expensive suits, all smoke and mirrors. By the 1970s, he was working in low-budget TV just to make ends meet. "They built me up and tore me down," he once said. "Not with criticism, with contracts." 17. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake's signature peekaboo hair made her an icon overnight, but Paramount used that fame more than she ever could. Her contract limited her to a flat salary with no profit sharing or appearance fees. Even when Sullivan's Travels and This Gun for Hire made millions, she saw none of it. She battled with directors and producers who called her difficult, and her roles dried up. Her marriage fell apart. Her drinking escalated. The studio dropped her, citing moral clauses. By the 1960s, she was working as a cocktail waitress in Manhattan. A customer once asked her, "Aren't you Veronica Lake?" Her answer, "I used to be." She filed for bankruptcy in 1962, her image immortalized, her wallet forgotten. 18. Dennis Morgan. Dennis Morgan sang his way through hit musicals and war films in the 1940s, but those dulcet tones hit a brutal reality. His contract with Warner Brothers gave him steady work, but locked him into a salary that barely budged, no matter how well the films performed. He was a top box office draw, yet his paycheck paled compared to newer stars. Worse, the studio added clauses allowing them to shelve him if newer talent emerged. When that happened, his income dried up, but his contract still barred him from working elsewhere. He invested what little he had in a series of failed business ventures, hoping to create a financial escape hatch. By the 1970s, he was bankrupt and forgotten, his name fading from marquees and his wealth with it. 19th. Joan Cfield. Joan Cfield dazzled with her all-American smile, starring in hits like Monsieur Beaucaire and Blue Skies. But behind the charm was a ruthless contract that drained her future. Paramount cast her as the next big thing, but refused to give her meaningful roles unless she agreed to renegotiate her contract under worse terms. She resisted. They shelved her. Her exclusive contract meant she couldn't accept outside offers, and when her time ran out, so did the public's interest. Her lawyer later revealed that her entire earnings from 4 years of stardom barely covered her taxes. She made the cover of magazines, but not a penny from the sales. Cfield eventually faded into B-movies and TV cameos, living modestly and carefully managing her dwindling savings. She once said, "I got famous fast. I just didn't get rich with it." 20th. Jackie Coogan. Jackie Coogan was America's first child star. Audiences adored him in Chaplin's The Kid. Studios made millions off his face, but Jackie saw none of it. His parents spent it all: lavish cars, houses, servants. By the time he turned 21, his $4 million fortune had evaporated. The worst part? His contract had no protections, no trust fund, no oversight, just a minor with a megawatt smile and zero legal rights. Coogan sued. He won, barely. The case led to the creation of the Coogan Law, requiring earnings of child actors to be set aside. But Jackie? He was broke. He rebuilt his career slowly, most notably as Uncle Fester on The Addams Family, but he never recovered financially. He became Hollywood's ultimate cautionary tale, a star who sparked a law, but never got justice. 21st. Gloria Graham. Gloria Graham won an Academy Award for The Bad and the Beautiful, but her studio contract did nothing to protect her finances or her reputation. Signed to a 7-year deal with MGM, she was cast in roles that ranged from brilliant to downright humiliating. She pushed back, demanding better scripts and fairer pay. In response, they suspended her, again and again. Each suspension meant missed income, but worse, her contract clock froze every time. What was supposed to be a 7-year deal stretched into nearly a decade. Divorces, custody battles, and plastic surgery expenses drained her savings. And because of the studio's tight grip, she missed out on lucrative offers from independent filmmakers. By the 1970s, she was working in tiny theater productions just to keep afloat. Her death in 1981 went largely unnoticed by the press. Gloria once said, "They gave me a statue, then they took everything else." A 22nd. William Holden. William Holden was a box office giant. Sunset Boulevard, Stalag 17, Bridge on the River Kwai. His resume glittered. But he had a dirty little secret. For years, he was drastically underpaid. His early contracts were inflexible, offering no percentage of profits. Even when Sunset Boulevard was a hit, Paramount walked away with millions. Holden? He barely saw a fraction. His lifestyle didn't help. A known drinker, he poured much of his wealth into wild adventures, gambling, and doomed romances. And because of his rigid studio deals, he missed out on the kind of back-end deals that made stars like Stewart and Brando rich. Later in life, Holden tried producing his own films, but the financial damage was already done. "I was the face of golden Hollywood," he once said, "but the gold never made it to my hands." 23rd. John Barrymore. John Barrymore was one of the most respected actors of his generation, a Shakespearean legend who brought stage gravitas to the screen. But contracts, addiction, and carelessness tore it all down. He signed multiple studio deals that paid well up front, but locked him into long hours, exhaustive travel, and zero profit participation. When talkies arrived, he scrambled to stay relevant, taking any contract no matter the terms. He borrowed against future earnings, then drank those earnings away. By the end, Barrymore was performing in radio spoofs of himself just to survive. His once luxurious lifestyle had dissolved into debt and delusion. He died in 1942, deeply in debt. His estate had so little value that it couldn't cover his funeral costs. Hollywood never forgot his talent, but it definitely forgot to protect it. 24th. Gail Russell. Gail Russell had haunting beauty and genuine talent. Paramount crafted her image for stardom, but the contract they handed her was pure poison. She was forced into one role after another, with little rest in between. Publicity tours, studio-controlled romances, press coverage micromanaged by legal teams. They even told her what to wear off-set. Her severe stage fright led to alcoholism, which the studio exploited, forcing her into work to stay productive rather than help her recover. By the mid-1950s, she was broke, divorced, and living alone in a crumbling apartment. Her contract had ended, but the damage was permanent. She died at just 36, surrounded by unpaid bills and empty bottles. "They made me a star," she once said, "but they forgot I was human." 25th. Wallace Reed. Wallace Reed was the matinee idol of the silent era, handsome, athletic, adored by millions. But when a train accident injured him during filming, the studio handed him morphine so production wouldn't fall behind. He became addicted. But instead of offering treatment, the studio doubled down, working him harder to keep the illusion of health. His contract locked him into multiple films a year, and missing one meant financial penalties he couldn't afford. So he kept going, kept filming, kept using. When he collapsed on set, the studio released a statement about exhaustion. He was dead within a year. His widow sued for unpaid wages, but the contract said he'd breached it by failing to complete his duties. His fame made money for everyone, except him. Bonus: Buster Keaton. Buster Keaton was once called the greatest stone-faced comedian in cinema history, but in 1928, he made a move that would cost him everything. He signed with MGM. Under MGM, Keaton lost creative control. Gone were the elaborate stunts, the ingenious timing, the daring gags. Studio execs rewrote his scripts, recut his films, banned him from directing. In one contract clause, MGM reserved the right to assign him roles without his consent. He went from auteur to bit player overnight. His earnings plummeted. His drinking soared. He was fired, rehired, then fired again. The final insult? MGM continued profiting from his earlier films, while Buster himself was working as a gag writer for $100 a week. He later said, "Signing with MGM was the worst mistake I ever made." And Hollywood agrees. They looked like gods on screen, untouchable, unbreakable. But behind those dazzling smiles were iron contracts, missing paychecks, and vanished fortunes. The stars of Golden Age Hollywood gave us unforgettable performances, but the system they trusted gave them broken dreams. Let that be the real legacy of old Hollywood, not just legends, but lessons. Hit that like button, subscribe for more untold stories, and remember, sometimes the brightest spotlight casts the darkest shadow.